Hello and welcome to Security Scan. I am Uday Bhaskar. This week, we focus on the recent avalanche tragedy in Jammu and Kashmir that led to the loss of 25 lives. Towards the end of January, a series of avalanches in the high altitudes of Jammu and Kashmir resulted in this death toll that includes 20 army personnel. Our deepest condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones. Avalanches are relatively unpredictable and happen very suddenly, trapping those caught beneath, and rescue operations are very challenging. For more often than not, response time is alarmingly short. And on occasion, as happened this time, those trapped are frozen to icy death. The Indian Army and Air Force operate in high altitude areas with commendable professionalism and fortitude, and the deployment in the Siachen Glacier is case in point. It is estimated that as many as 900 military personnel have lost their lives due to weather-related exigencies since 1984. High altitude disaster operations are extremely complex and fraught with high risk, and the ARTs or avalanche rescue teams have saved numerous lives. How can India address this high altitude natural phenomenon in a manner that will reduce the loss of human lives? To discuss this issue, as always, we have an eminent panel. Lieutenant General Rameshwar Roy, who has served in high altitudes for many years. Surgeon Rear Admiral V.K. Singh, who is a high altitude specialist. And Air Vice Marshal Manmohan Bahadur, who has flown extensively in these altitudes and will help us to understand the nature of the challenge. Let me turn to you first, General Roy.
Hello.
You have commanded a brigade, you have served extensively. How would you sort of frame the nature of the challenge, the most recent one where 20 army personnel have lost their lives?
You see, first of all, we must look at the terrain where the snowfall pattern is quite easily discernible. Once we look at the area where these tragedies have occurred since 25th of January, this is the mountainous area which is referred to popularly as the Shamshabadi ridgeline. This is the first ridgeline which is encountered by the snow-clad mountains which are emanating from the Arabian Sea. And therefore, the snowfall pattern on this Shamshabadi ridgeline is very, very heavy every winter. You can imagine that it is anything from 25 to 30 feet accumulation of snow. And what keeps happening is that there is a layer and layers of snow that keeps falling on it. Therefore, there is a variation in the thickness of the snow that keeps on getting accumulated. This precisely is the reason, combined with the slopes which are there, it's like an overhang of snow where any kind of a trigger can come from host of reasons, host of vibrations and the climatic conditions which change. It's a small speck of snow which starts rolling down these slopes, and as it rolls down, it keeps accumulating more and more snow.
So it gathers more momentum.
It gathers more momentum, and as it comes to the lower reaches, it is then whatever comes in its way, it will either sweep it away or it will just cover it if the structure is too strong. The issue here is that the mountain, that is Shamshabadi ridgeline, just behind this is the valley. So these are the plain areas. Therefore, from the plain areas, when this mountain ridge rises, it rises quite steeply. This is one of the reasons why this area is very avalanche prone winter after winter.
But did you lose any troops when you were in command there?
Yes, when I was there, in fact, losing of troops can be on two counts. One, that the permanent structures which are there, they get buried under the snow avalanche. Two, the people who are moving the small body of troops from one place to the other, unfortunately, the track on which they are moving, the avalanche comes on the track and those people get swept away. At the same time, they get buried. The third reason could be, these mountains, when the wind is blowing, it makes a kind of an artificial layer, artificial
ridge or whatever they call it.
It's called cornice. That where the cornice is formed, on the surface it looks very honest, innocent, innocuous. But as the troops would walk on it by mistake,
They'd
it
collapse
collapses and they will be swept away. Now they die due to what is called hypothermia.
Well,
They
that's
would
the
be
right, I think, entry for our
frozen
doctor.
to death. Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Admiral Singh, as a doctor, could you help us to understand the nature of the medical challenge, both for the troops who are serving, as also what happens when you are trapped under an avalanche?
Right, thank you. Actually speaking, there are three parts of the health system. Since I was served in Leh and Siachen, I was also international mountaineer, and a lot of studies which have been done on this issue. First one is how we can prevent ourselves. So there are people who non-medical comes that they map the area, this is avalanche prone area, which is to be done and which is to be every time updated, because what is today will not happen probably after a couple of years. There are two recent factors which have come up. One is the climatic change. Because of that, the avalanches change their course accordingly. Second one is simple noise, talking, laughing, even a bullet fire by across the border can create an avalanche. So one has to be away from the area where the avalanche is going to be. I have seen the avalanche myself in international mountaineers. And second one is that all the people have to be told what is to be done if you stuck by the avalanche. There are three things which happen. First, death maximally happens when you are buried and there is no oxygen, and that is called hypoxia. That it means you are not getting, so you make some sort of a place where you can breathe. More you buried inside, more number of hours, the less chances of your survival. And this is because you don't able to breathe there. So this is one factor which has to be seen. Second is lowering the temperature. If temperature goes of the body less than 30 degree, then everything gets sluggish. In operation theatre, we do this hypothermia for operating into the hard cases. But then our the oxygen line is very patent, which is not here in that case.
And we are talking about temperatures of minus 10 to 15 degrees centigrade in the avalanche.
That's right. So avalanches is that. So that means you are on hypothermia, means your body temperature is reduced and slowly heart starts sinking. And third one is because of the impact and rolling down, you get trauma or injury, which can cause also the death. Now, three things which one can think of how I can survive longer by taking a breath until the rescue team comes and they try to rescue me and take out me from that place. Second is once I am taken it out, because inside you can't really warm up your body, then immediately somebody has to warm you up to the extent possible by hot drink or by blankets, etc. Because once your body becomes cold, so even any amount of blanket doesn't really help. So there are battery operated warmers are available now, and then the skiing
but
people are
this is
taking.
only in the event that the rescue team is able to reach. But that's where I'd like to bring you in, Air Marshal Bahadur. You have been flying in those areas. If I remember right, you were one of the first in 1978 to go up in a Chetak helicopter up to Siachen.
That's right.
So how would you characterize or explain to our viewers the nature of the challenge when it comes to the use of helicopters or any other means for evacuation or for any other disaster relief that could be provided from the air?
Basically, there are three points that come in. One, that information. Second, the availability of aircraft to move and go to the place. And third is the recovery and bringing back to base or to a hospital facility. So firstly is, which is very critical, is the point that information must reach the place where helicopters are available. There is that famous golden hour in so many things which is there. So if the aircrew are told, and there are in such places aircraft which are readily available, which are on SAR, search and rescue duties, wherein the aircraft is absolutely ready, and the moment the information comes, the aircrew rush to the helicopter after having planned where they have to go, and they strap up, start and move as fast as possible. So there needs to be means of communication to from where this avalanche has occurred or from the rear party to the helicopter operating base. Secondly, the helicopters itself, they are selected. They cannot be very big because if they are big, then the downwash from the rotors itself becomes a pressure on the snow
And could create another
and
avalanche.
could create further problems. Besides the fact it's difficult to handle those helicopters at those altitudes. So generally they are light helicopters like the Chetak or the Cheetah, presently the Cheetahs, and the Cheetahs would rush to that place. Normally they would go to an advanced place where they would be told exactly where the location is, the latitude, longitudes, and then they would go there. There would obviously have to be people who would have pulled out the survivors. And in case the survivors are not there, then the model remains. So the aircraft has to now find a place to sit and to sit down on the place, and the bodies or the survivors are then loaded in. Now, from the critical point, actually medical aid normally is not available. The survivors have to be brought down
To the nearest hospital.
to the nearest advanced dressing station, ADS as the army calls it. So that position at that point of time, the casualty can be in a bad situation. So it's very critical that once he is brought out, he is brought to the advanced dressing station if possible and stabilized. Stabilized for the next transfer to a station where he can be given further specialist medical care.
So it would be fair to say that disaster relief at high altitude, particularly from the air, is a very hazardous kind of an operation, has to be done with great professionalism.
Absolutely. The aircrew is not any aircrew who can go in. The aircrew have to be trained for the altitudes at which they have to
And
operate.
acclimatized to operate there.
Normally they are acclimatized. If they are put on SAR duties, it's an acclimatized crew who is put there. It's a crew who is trained in that area to operate in that area, because every mountain is different. Mountains of northeast are different than mountains in
Of
Srinagar,
J&K and so on.
in Srinagar, and different than in the
Well, I'll
glacier.
come back to you, Manmohan, about Siachen in particular. But General Roy, if I could ask you to help us understand, we talk about the ART, the Avalanche Rescue Teams. As also, the Army has now been operating there for more than 25 years, if not more. We talk about 84 in Siachen. So two issues here. One, how are ARTs composed? And two, has the ability of the establishment, the Army in particular, or for that matter, the other agencies, to predict the avalanche? Are we getting any better?
I would like to say there is an organization called Snow Avalanche Study Establishment, SASE.
The SASE, yeah.
SASE, with headquarters at Chandigarh. They have got these remote monitoring stations in critical areas where the snowfall gets recorded very high. One such SASE team was deployed in my area where I was the commander. And their remotely controlled machines or the gadgets are there by which they measure the snowfall and the pattern of snowfall. These are the people actually who are also required to come out annually or SASE map, which predicts the high avalanche prone areas, less avalanche prone areas, and categorize them in that manner.
This is done by mapping the area.
It's a mapping the area. Now the problem with that mapping is that in case of Army, we are required to hold certain critical posts despite such vulnerability. That is issue number one. Issue number two is that despite the danger of avalanches coming in certain areas, the troops have to perforce move through those areas as part of their routine patrolling or domination of those areas. If you recollect the Kargil disaster which happened because the area was unheld and enemy was able to come and occupy that area. So it is part of the profession that they have to perforce move through those areas. The third big difficulty here is that no matter what kind of a trigger takes place for the avalanche to get triggered, like you have already heard these panelists, my co-panelists who have said that it's very difficult to actually say from where will it occur. So in all probability, you have to be prepared more for the reaction than for the action.
Which is where the ART comes in.
That is where the avalanche rescue teams come in. Now these teams invariably are also with the formations which are deployed in these areas, but by and large they come from the school of altitude warfare that we have in Gulmarg.
Okay.
So therefore the problem here is that the avalanche, when it gets triggered, invariably the weather is bad in those areas.
Yeah.
So first big difficulty is these rescue teams to reach the spot where the rescue is required. That is issue one. The issue two is when you reach there, if the snow avalanche has been so big that everything is buried under the snow, you do not know precisely where exactly the
the-
troops are buried under. Now we have got the battery operated gadgets which troops carry. They carry a cord also which can indicate where they are. But many times you find that such gadgets, they just get buried and it fails.
do not work
It
when they
fails,
should.
yes, exactly. So it becomes like searching for a needle in a haystack. These rescue teams which go there, they are expert mountaineers. They have got the digging tools, they have got the kind of sustainability, they can operate in bad weather, they can go to any of the place where
And
these
over
people
the
are
years,
buried.
they have done
But-
some very commendable rescue operations to the best of
yes,
my knowledge, I
yes.
recall over the last few years. But Dr.
Yes,
V.K. Singh,
they have.
one aspect about technology and where modern medicine is now going, we have heard about avalanches all over the world, wherever there is high altitude. Some of them occur in ski resorts, where a lot of people go for tourism activities. So today, where is medicine moving in terms of being able to improve both, I would say, the survival probability as also the rescue, and how is India sort of positioned? Are we able to match what the global norms are or where the global median is?
I think a very good question. This is what really should be. The prevention is better than cure. In fact, normal skier and the mountaineer are much more better equipped than our Indian troops. One is availability of information. So I will say that firstly, the area which are there to be mapped and the red flags have to be put there. This is one thing what Sasai said is supposed to do, but they need to be updated time to time. It is not necessary the avalanche don't shift, they shift from place A to place 2. The second one is that we have to have minimum of the human movement in those places. Leave the mountain naturally, so may go for electronic surveillances, which is possible. Third is when you carry like a normal bandage in case of a war, you must say that in high altitude you will carry this chemical bag where you put the water and the heating starts in that for a couple of hours. You have a small, I remember in mountaineer I have used very collapsible disposable oxygen cylinder which were very small in weight. That should be carried by each person. So if he caught up in avalanche, he can use it. Third is as a nation, let me tell you, because I have written national guideline on disaster as a part of NDMA, this part was never anybody
Addressed.
has written and thought of it. It is not only for the troops, but it's the skiers, tourists, and also local population.
local population
it
is
needs
also
to be
affected,
done,
yeah.
and it will keep increasing in days to come because climatic changes are there. Human people are
Global warming is a reality,
Global
so-
warming is there. A lot of people going into the mountains, and that even a movement will
Can cause
the
the.
problem.
Hey, Marshal Bahadur, one of the issues is now you flew in 1978 in a Chetak when you went to Siachen.
That's right.
Over the last 3 decades, in terms of the Indian Air Force, which has been doing a tremendous job over the years, and I think it's often unrecognized, what is the nature of the challenge for chopper pilots like you who have flown in those areas? And as far as the Siachen operation itself is concerned, how would you describe the challenge for the air warrior or the helicopter pilot?
That's the ultimate flying. In fact, every helicopter pilot in the Air Force and the Army Aviation wants to do tenure in Leh and beyond into the glacier.
What altitudes are we talking about?
We're talking of regular landings, maybe 6 or 7 of them at altitudes of 19,500 feet.
19,500 feet.
That's
Wow.
correct. And that's where actually at Sonam that we had the avalanche last year where Lance Naik Hanuman Thappa came out after 7 days. That wall which collapsed, let's take that as an example. That wall has been there. I saw it in way back in the 80s. But global warming resulted in that huge wall on the Bana post collapsing and coming onto the Sonam post. We never thought it would have ever happened, but it happened. So, and at the same place, a few years earlier, there was a helicopter that went into a crevice, and the air crew were down there in the crevice. So, coming back to the point that had been raised, the helicopters which are on standby duty, search and rescue helicopters at base camp, they got airborne. And they got airborne with the rescue team which is positioned 24/7 ready at base camp. They were taken to Sonam and they brought the aircrew out.
Where is the base camp, incidentally?
The base camp is north of Thois. I mean, it's about, say, 25 minutes.
Okay.
Just short of the Siachen Glacier and the snout of the Siachen Glacier. So, with this global warming, and I've seen it over the years, the snout, where it was in 78 and where it is now, it's receded. It's receded tremendously. So, we require expert aircrew, crew cleared to fly as captain in the glacier. And when you reach the glacier, then everything is white below you. You don't have depth perception. You don't have estimation of speed as you are closing in. And at those altitudes, your power that is available to you is very, very minimal. You do not have reserve of power actually to go around and try and make another approach. So you have to be very clear. You are committed for a landing. And that's where experience comes in. That's where, as you are approaching the helipad, there are two famous helipads, Amar and Sonam. As you are approaching the helipad, those crevices actually have over the years become our indicators of what speed should you be over the first crevice, the second crevice, the third crevice, and somewhere here your airspeed indicator stops registering, and now you're going the way your seat is approaching the helipad, and then you go and stop.
Well, you're a good helicopter pilot. I think you've given us a very vivid image. So clearly, when you talk about this or refer to this as the ultimate in flying, both the Air Force pilots and the Army Aviation, I think, are doing a tremendous job. But Rameshwar, with your experience in the Army, when we talk about the future and the policy issues, does the Army have adequate resources for high altitude, or we're also in budget session? So maybe you could draw attention to some of the gaps, and where is it that the policy makers should be looking?
My stock answer would be no.
We do not have enough resources.
We do not have.
I think it should be said emphatically.
Yes, it should be said very, very emphatically, and let me bring out three issues on this. The first issue is, in case of proactive measures, the SASE that we have, they need to be more proactive.
And motivated.
Motivated enough to be there in those areas, to be able to forecast the likely sites more accurately, closer to the happening, and not take out an annual map and just hit over it. So it has to be more to do with like Mausam Vibhag, which is able to forecast the tsunamis, which is able to forecast the storms and such like things. That is issue one.
And again, I imagine India could then perhaps provide some assistance to the neighbors.
Absolutely.
Because Afghanistan has also gone through a very severe tragedy last year.
So that is one, that the SASE needs to be very, very proactive. They need not close themselves into kind of a research organization that presently they feel they are. That is issue one. The second issue is that we need to have a large number of areas beyond Siachen Glacier which are equally prone to get these avalanches. They are equally prone to get the degree of snow accumulation which takes place. In fact, Shamshabad ridgeline is one such area. It gets the maximum accumulation of snow every winter. Yes, it's a lifeline to the locals in the valley because that becomes a source of water. But at the same time, it also becomes, or it causes risk to the troops staying in those areas. Therefore, the second issue here is that the kind of equipment that the Siachen troops have been given to protect themselves from winter and such like disaster, that needs to be given to larger amount of troops who may be serving in a lesser altitude. Like Shamshabad is just about 11,000 feet. But the fact of the matter is, because of the snow conditions, the degree of difficulty, the wind speeds and the other conditions are so severe that you require to issue a similar equipment to the large areas, which is not happening.
As you said, resources is always a constraint.
Yes.
And I just want to make one point that many years ago you'll recall that then Defense Minister Mr. George Fernandes in NDA 1, when the system was not, shall we say, as swift in terms of its responses, he sent some bureaucrats to high altitude, and then lots of things happened. But I apologize, we don't have enough time to ask you for your policy recommendations.
Just a last
quickly.
Issue. So just a last issue is that the posts which tactically are to be where they are, and the tracks which are to be taken because of the operational reasons, we can come out with the protective measures in terms of the infrastructure.
Okay,
that
infrastructure
must be put in place.
done. We'll flag that. But at the end of the day, avalanches are listed as being among the most dangerous of natural disasters. And empirically, though they are not as rare as the kind of earthquakes and tsunamis that result in much greater destruction, historically, the most severe avalanche led to the death of 20,000 people in Peru in 1970. Currently, the technology available to predict avalanches is very limited. but pioneering research is being pursued in some parts of the world. And one such technology is what is called as the Site Monitor 3D-LM. This refers to site monitoring through three-dimensional laser mapping, and this technique was first used to map gold mines in Africa. Switzerland is also working on a new technology that includes the simulation of specific weather conditions at high altitude that could lead to an avalanche, but these are still nascent and yet to be credibly proven for their efficacy. India will have to acquire the necessary capacity, human, material, and technological, to enhance its high altitude disaster relief capacity. And as our discussion highlighted, a number of initiatives are being pursued. Security personnel who serve in these areas, whether from the military or the Central Armed Police Forces such as the ITBP, need all the assistance and technological support that the country can provide. Apart from the security forces, the lives of the inhabitants of these areas are as precious, and hopefully the January tragedy will spur the collective national effort to mitigate the tragedy that avalanches can cause. Our thoughts and prayers are with those who lost their lives in January. On that note, let me thank my guests, Lieutenant General Roy, Rear Admiral V.K. Singh, and AVM Bahadur. And thank you for watching Security Scan. Goodbye.